Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 3 volumes of the book Venture of Islam by Marshall Hodgson present a unique perspective on world history, which focuses on the contributions of Islam. This book has been reviewed by Bruce Lawrence, and this lecture will cover the review of Bruce Lawrence and add a little bit from my own perspective. So here's the title of the book review, which I plan to cover. So the reviewer opens by saying that Hodgson wanted to change the world by changing our view of Islamic history. So to expand on this, history is basically a collection of ideas in our mind. It is a narrative, a story which we have been told about how the world came to be as it is today. Today we have been trained by a Western education, and this Western education teaches us that history starts in Europe and all else is ignorance, barbarism, superstition. So if we come to understand the role of Islam in world history, which has been suppressed in these Eurocentric views, this will change the picture of the world, and therefore it will change the world that we live in. The author provides a very brief bio of Marshall Hodgson as a man of conscience. Born 1922, drafted for World War II in 42. He refused to serve, and as a conscientious objector, as a Quaker, he served 5 years in a detention center, after which he went to University of Chicago and got a PhD in history. And the reviewer writes that he was a genius and a visionary, and this is his magnum opus, The Venture of Islam, in 3 volumes. Unfortunately, he died before he could finish it in 1980, and it was finished by his students posthumously in 1984 and published. And the unique feature of this book is that it provides a moral vision of history, and this narrative has a potential to revolutionize the world in many dimensions. In particular, it offers an alternative Eurocentric history, which is based on morality instead of on the pursuit of wealth. Hodgson divides this book, this Islamic history, into 7 phases. The first one is formation and orientation, which goes back to trace the pre-Islamic roots of cultures and civilizations and languages that led to the creation of Islam. And this first era goes to the era of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. After this, the second era is called conversion and crystallization, in which Muslims conquer a large portion of the world, but the faith does not spread so widely, and so the Muslims are minorities in the areas that they conquer. In the third phase, the Muslims spread as a civilization force, but splinter as political entities. In the fourth phase is called migration and renewal, and which basically goes through the Mongol invasion. So one of the key features of Hodgson's history is that this is a global vision. The 1500 years of Islamic history are placed within a 3,000-year perspective, which starts by covering 4 advanced cultural areas, 3 of which were homogeneous, the Greek area and the Sanskrit area and the Chinese area. But the Nile to Oxus was a very heterogeneous area in which there were multiple languages and cultures. And so this period, the axial age as it is called, the major religions developed in this period, And so this is a study by Hodgson in the first part as to how this process occurred and what were the ideas that led to the creation of Islam. Some of the key framing ideas of Hodgson have been summarized by his student Huri Jahan Islamoglu, and these are summarized in 4 points. One is that all of us human beings are together. We are brothers and sisters, and we have a shared history. And the differences and conflicts which separate us are not as important as the commonalities which join us. The second point is that people matter. Every single individual is important in shaping world history. All human action, to understand how people behave, we have to look at the historical context and the geographical context. This cannot be understood universally, as many economic and political theories today pretend to do. And finally, related to the above, people matter not just as recipients of history and responders to history, but also as shapers of history. So one of the key concepts here is that there is only one world history. Islam is a part of world history, not apart from it. Hodgson characterizes how streams of world history led to Islam and how Islam led to the West and played a critical role in shaping the Western civilization. After Hodgson, Eurocentric thinkers have again otherized Islam, made the Islamic civilization foreign and alien, and the project of reclaiming this lost history or stolen history continues to this day. Today, our Eurocentric education trains us in a Western worldview according to which the Greeks made tremendous progress in the past, but then there was a period of darkness where nothing happened. For 500 years, there was a great gap. And then the Western civilization picked up the threads from the Greeks and then continued its progress. If you look at the red line in this graph, that's what the modern Eurocentric history tells us about. The other line, the rise and fall of Islamic civilization, is completely absent from the picture. So the unique position of Marshall Hodgson is that Islamdom, just like Christendom, is central to the rise of the West. Islam created an inclusive, multi-centered world order, and the Islamic norms and values created the current cosmopolitan world. Key political and legal innovations in the West come from the Islam. Constitutions, jury trials, many concepts of law, and many other shaping ideas of Western culture require us to pay attention to all of the world system as a single historical unit. In order to create room for an Islamic perspective on world history, Hodgson coined a few new terms. One of the key ones is Islamicate. Islamic is, of course, well understood and known and has a standard meaning. But when we refer to Islamicate, we refer to a broader conception of the Islamic world, which included many aspects of cultures and class and perspectives which are not really Islamic in the sense they do not derive from Quran and Hadith, but they are part of Islamic culture and part of the response that the religion taught or created among the Muslim civilizations. And this also includes the broader approaches to Islam by outsiders as well. So it's essential to be able to step outside of a narrow Islamic perspective, which treats everything from within the Islam and the Islamic law, and also essential to create a perspective which doesn't, from the Western perspective, which basically treats Islam as a stranger, an alien, and an enemy. So Islamicate is a broad perspective on Islam which takes Islam as a religion and also considers the cultural and the historical and the geographical aspects of Islam together with the Islamic religion. So in general, there have been many followers of Hodgson's legacy who have accepted the idea that Islam plays a much more important role in world history than has been recognized, but they have not really taken the central vision of Hodgson on board, that we are all one family and that Islam is just part of the world civilization, just like the Western civilization is also a part of this. And there is mutual harmful and beneficial interactions. The author of the review writes that to continue and to carry on the legacy of Hodgson, we have to take it to the classrooms, but it is a real challenge to communicate Islamicate themes to undergraduates. But if we duck this challenge, we will be left with a superficial understanding of history and of the West itself. One of the best students of Hodgson is Marilyn Waldman, and her article, The Islamic World, which is part of Encyclopedia Britannica, has done the best job in terms of carrying on with this vision of Hodgson. And this historical material developed by her, which extends the Hodgsonian approach to the modern world, needs to be made part of world history. Alienization of Islam, which is currently become very popular theme, was one of Hodgson's nightmares. And today, the clash of civilizations idea that Islam is completely different from the West is fairly dominant, and the themes of Islamophobia and Islamophilia are so broadly accepted that the real subtlety and the refinement of Hodgson's approach becomes lost. Hodgson died before he could publish his book, and around that time, Edward Said published his masterful book Orientalism, which was massively impactful. And basically, Orientalism pointed out the deep Eurocentric bias within the standard histories. What Hodgson actually did was to provide an antidote. Instead of a Eurocentric history, he actually wrote an Islamocentric history, which makes Islamic civilization as an integral and central part of history. But what Edward Said's work had an impact of marginalizing and shunting to the side Hodgson's contribution. But basically, he said that the West is unable to provide good understanding of Islam because of their cultural prejudices and biases. So basically, he asked for hands-off of Islam, whereas Hodgson asked for an engagement, a constructive engagement. So the world has changed a lot since Hodgson, and the perspective and the space that was open to him at that time with the Cold War and the Vietnam War and poverty and civil rights had an essentially moral dimension. And so the moral perspective taken by Hodgson had a strong appeal to a wide audience. Today, the world has changed radically, and this perspective has been much more marginalized, but there is still room for it, and it's desperately needed today. So some concluding remarks by myself on this review and on Hodgson. First of all, it's only within a moral history of the world that the history of the European civilization appears like a decline rather than progress. Hodgson laid the foundations for an integrative and cosmopolitan approach which covers Islam and West within a broad framework without marginalizing either. Sayyid Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi created beginnings of a moral approach to history inspired by Islam. His book is of crucial importance, What the World Lost Due to the Decline of Islam. Unfortunately, neither of these approaches, both of which are essential for our creating an alternative to Eurocentric history, neither has been followed up. The importance of creating a moral dimension in history is emphasized by this quote from Hodgson, that today our focus on technology and science has reduced our humanity, and in order to become human or to remain human, we must engage with the fabric of civilization created by our ancestors, which come from all civilizations. Another quote from Hodgson shows that he recognizes the moral vision of the Islamic civilization. The whole goal of the civilization was to shape the world in accordance with the highest standards of available to humanity, with high visions and ideals that Islam provides us with: justice and freedom from oppression, and economic and political justice, and social responsibility, cooperation, generosity. These are the moral ideals upon which Islamic civilization built a society. And this final quote from Hodgson is a good point to conclude, that this moral vision of the Quran, the ideal for which we want to convey the complete and perfect message of God to all human beings, this ideal remains unfinished. But Muslims continue to believe in this vision and continue to hope in the implementation of this vision. And the history of Islam derives its uniqueness from this vision and this venture to shape history in accordance with the ideas that are given to us in the final message of God to man. May Allah Ta'ala help us all to achieve and accomplish this vision, to shape the world in the ways that will make us pleasing to Allah.